More and more people are turning toward spiritual explanations for physical symptoms that traditional medicine often struggles to explain. Because deep inside, something begins to sense that another kind of intelligence is working beneath what the body reveals. And for many people, a spiritual awakening starts exactly like this, as a language expressing itself through the skin, the muscles, and the gut, long before the conscious mind fully understands it. Carl Jung once wrote, "The body is the unconscious made visible," and that is exactly what unfolds during a spiritual awakening. Old patterns begin to break apart, the persona starts to crack, the shadow rises to the surface. The ego tries to keep everything together, but eventually it can no longer contain the intensity of what is emerging. And within that tension between what is fading away and what is trying to be born, the body feels every part of it. Everything that has been buried deep inside begins to awaken. The old inner structure dissolves into a chaos too overwhelming for words, so it expresses itself through physical symptoms instead. And these symptoms appear again and again among those walking the path of awakening, almost like repeating notes in the symphony of the soul. In this video, we're going to explore 11 physical symptoms that commonly appear during a spiritual awakening. Think of this as a guide, a map that may help you recognize where you are on this journey and perhaps even understand where your soul is trying to lead you. So stay with me until the end. Really pay attention, because understanding this process can completely change the way you move through this calling. And when you finish, I invite you to take the next step by watching the video called The 12 Stages of Spiritual Awakening here on the channel. I'll leave it in the cards and in the description below. It dives deeper into this path and may help you better understand where you are right now and what could come next. There are moments when the body seems to become pure vibration. Without warning, it reacts as though something unseen is moving through it. Small tremors in the hands, goosebumps traveling along the spine, waves of heat or energy rising from the legs to the top of the head, almost like an invisible current switching on inside the body. There's no fever, no cold, no obvious physical cause. Yet something is clearly moving, and the force behind it feels deeper than the physical. It feels archetypal. This is the first symptom of spiritual awakening: tremors, chills, and sudden energy surges. Many people mistake it for anxiety, but within the context of awakening, its source is very different. The energy field is reorganizing itself. The nervous system, highly sensitive and deeply responsive, reacts to the return of something that has remained dormant for a very long time. Something deep within begins to awaken, and the body responds as the channel through which it moves. Ancient traditions gave different names to this energy: Kundalini, Chi, Prana. Jung described this process as the return of primal instincts that civilization had long suppressed. The body is no longer functioning only as biology. It becomes an archetypal instrument through which ancient currents of life begin to flow again. The conscious mind may not fully understand what is happening, but the body recognizes it immediately. These experiences often occur when the root chakra, the solar plexus, or the crown center become activated by an inner force stronger than logic itself. These are the centers connected to survival, personal power, and spiritual connection, now being touched by a higher level of awareness. The soul stops feeling like an abstract concept and begins taking up real space within the body. And the body, once operating automatically, is suddenly being awakened from within. At this stage, many people become afraid. They search for neurological explanations, medical causes, or attempt to ignore what is happening altogether. But these reactions are not necessarily asking to be fixed. They are asking to be understood. Because what is moving through these moments is not only energy. It is also the release of something ancient. It is the body quietly saying, "I am ready to remember." In truth, the body becomes a living ritual. Every shiver, Every tremor, every tingling sensation becomes a reminder that consciousness is moving down from the mind into the physical body itself. And as uncomfortable as these sensations may feel, they also represent cleansing, a symbolic release of what has been blocked for years. Something remained trapped. Now it is finally beginning to move. This stage is not about control or constant analysis. The invitation is much simpler. Allow it. Let the body communicate. Breathe through the experience. Stay present with whatever unfolds. Because at this point, there is no clear logic, only rhythm. And it is that rhythm that slowly begins to shape the path forward. The second physical symptom of spiritual awakening is hearing sounds that do not seem to come from the outside world. A constant ringing in the ears, a high-pitched tone appearing in silence, frequencies that seem to cut through the air, even though nobody else around can hear them. For those experiencing it, it often feels strange, as though something unseen is interfering with their hearing or transmitting a signal from another realm. This is not necessarily an auditory hallucination or a sensory malfunction. Within spiritual awakening, it is often described as psychic sensitivity beginning to open. During this phase, the ears stop functioning only as biological organs. They become symbolic instruments of subtle perception. Jung might describe it as the outer sense of hearing becoming flooded by inner psychological content. The psyche, searching for expression, finds its way through sound. The soul wants to be heard, and frequency becomes its language. These sounds, sometimes metallic and sometimes deeply vibrational, often appear during moments when rational mental activity becomes quiet. Deep meditation, long periods of silence, sleepless nights, or moments when the unconscious mind finds space to rise to the surface. And because it still lacks images or language, it first expresses itself as sound. In mythology, Hermes, the messenger of the gods, was also the guardian of crossroads, and deep listening always exists at a crossroads between the visible and the invisible, between the noise of everyday life and the quiet voice of the unconscious. The archetype of the messenger becomes active through this symptom, as though each mysterious sound carries a coded message from the soul, something not yet fully understood, but already trying to communicate. Many people try to ignore it, cover their ears, or blame exhaustion and stress. Yet the more resistance appears, the more persistent the sound can become. Because the experience is not truly about the sound itself. It is about the shift in awareness that the sound represents. The body is learning to listen differently, and the discomfort is not always an illness. Sometimes it is recalibration. There is something sacred hidden within these sounds, not necessarily because of what they communicate, but simply because they exist at all. They mark the beginning of a new kind of listening, one that moves beyond logic and reason. A listening that may begin in the ear, but eventually reaches the soul. The third physical symptom of spiritual awakening often appears in the center of the body, the digestive system. Unexplained nausea, sudden appetite changes, increased gut sensitivity, or discomfort without any major dietary change. This is more than an ordinary stomach issue. It reflects an inner reality that is being transformed. The stomach is responsible for digestion, but not only of food. Symbolically, it also processes experiences and emotions the mind has not yet fully understood. Jung often referred to the idea of psychic indigestion, when the unconscious mind becomes overwhelmed by emerging content and expresses itself through physical symptoms. The stomach, intestines, and liver become symbolic stages where the body attempts to process emotional overload that has not yet found words. During awakening, deep material rises toward the surface. Memories, beliefs, old wounds, hidden desires, unresolved emotions. Even without consciously identifying them, the body feels their presence, It can feel as though the soul is trying to digest an experience it never chose to receive, and the digestive system, overwhelmed by this process, reacts with imbalance. The gut is often called the second brain, not only because of its complex neural network, but also because of its deep connection to the unconscious mind. It is where the body reacts to primal emotional states like fear, guilt, disgust, and shame. That is why many people during this stage feel as though they are being turned inside out, as though years of emotional buildup are finally being reorganized. What this phase requires is not necessarily a stricter diet or greater control. What it truly asks for is awareness and presence. Instead of focusing only on removing the symptom, the deeper question becomes, what is being symbolically rejected? What feels impossible to digest emotionally? Which part of your personal story is returning as heaviness, nausea, or tension? What is the soul trying to release? Awakening affects the gut in a very literal way, but this discomfort is not necessarily punishment. It can be part of a deep inner cleansing, an emotional clearing that creates space for new vitality. When the soul changes, the body must also learn to process life differently. And sometimes that transformation begins with recognizing what the body can no longer tolerate. The fourth physical symptom of spiritual awakening is a kind of exhaustion that ordinary rest cannot fix. The body feels heavy. Motivation disappears. You wake up tired, even after doing very little. Everyday tasks suddenly feel difficult. A strange slowness settles over life, almost as though your energy has been drained from within. It is easy to label this experience as laziness or lack of motivation, but this kind of fatigue comes from a different source. It does not begin in the body alone. It reaches the body from somewhere much deeper. It is as though the ego, after carrying everything alone for so long, is finally beginning to surrender. The old way of functioning no longer works, and the entire inner system temporarily slows down in order to reset itself. Jung described this as the stage when the ego, exhausted from constantly trying to maintain control, slowly makes space for the self. And this transition is not gentle. It demands enormous psychic energy. Seen from this perspective, exhaustion becomes a sign that something profound is happening beneath the surface. The soul is clearing, rearranging, and reorganizing years of emotional and psychological accumulation. The work is real, even though it remains invisible, quiet, and deeply internal. While the mind keeps pushing forward, the body begins to resist. It slows everything down and asks for stillness, because there is a difference between simply functioning and living in alignment with truth. And during this stage of awakening, that truth is still taking shape. That is why everything can feel paused, even though deep transformation is already happening beneath the surface. This kind of exhaustion cannot be solved through more effort, and certainly not through guilt. It asks for surrender, not in the sense of giving up, but in the sense of crossing into a new way of being. It becomes a transition between living on autopilot and acting with awareness. The soul is quietly saying, "Stop. Turn inward. What comes next cannot be built using the same rhythm that once guided your life." At this stage, rest becomes a spiritual act, not an escape, but a form of listening. The body needs time to reorient itself, and sometimes the only way to do that is by shutting down everything unnecessary, including your usual drive and determination. The fifth physical symptom appears in the chest: sudden heart palpitations, waves of heat rising through the body, pressure around the heart, almost as though something inside is trying to break free. There may be no physical activity, no clear trigger, yet the body reacts intensely. At this point, the heart is no longer functioning only as an organ. It becomes a psychological and emotional center in transformation. Carl Jung viewed the heart as a symbol of emotional wholeness, a meeting place between instinct and awareness. And when the deeper self begins to emerge, it often reaches the heart first because it touches everything that has been emotionally denied, repressed, or hidden away. Old pain, locked emotions, unspoken affection, unresolved wounds, all begin to thaw after years of emotional numbness. And this release is rarely silent. The energy wants to move, expand, and flow outward. And naturally, it moves through the most human center of all, the heart. That inner heat is not necessarily illness or fever. It is emotional release. Layers of buried feeling are being stirred from within, not to cause harm, but to finally move out of the system. Along with this, tears may appear without warning. Sudden anxiety may rise. Unexpected joy may emerge just as quickly. There is no simple logic to it, only openness. What was hidden has now become accessible. And that openness can feel frightening because an open heart also exposes vulnerability. But vulnerability is not weakness. It is an opening. The body is reminding you that life still exists within you, that there are still emotions waiting to be felt and truths waiting to flow freely. If your chest reacts during this stage, do not immediately suppress it or run from it. Breathe through it. Place your hand over your heart and remain present with the sensation. Because the deeper self does not arrive first as a thought. It arrives as a living presence that moves through the body. And the body, in its own wisdom, allows that presence to pass directly through the center of your being. The sixth physical symptom often appears during the moments when the world should feel quiet. Sleep disruption. Insomnia in the middle of the night, without any obvious reason. Waking up around 3 or 4 in the morning as though something unseen has called your attention. And when sleep finally returns, the dreams become intense, symbolic, emotional, and deeply vivid, lingering in the mind long after waking up. The body may need rest, but the soul remains active, and the unconscious mind does not follow ordinary schedules. Jung described dreams as messages sent from the unconscious to the conscious mind. During awakening, those messages often arrive with urgency. The body attempts to rest, yet at the same time it becomes the messenger itself. This is not simply insomnia or vivid dreaming. It is the symbolic mind working constantly to integrate deeply buried material. The self, unable to fully express itself during the day, uses the openness of sleep to reach awareness. The result is a tired body, but a soul moving intensely beneath the surface. Some people report recurring nightmares, encounters with symbolic figures, feelings of presence in the room, or even sleep paralysis. These experiences can feel unsettling and, at times, frightening. Yet hidden within this nighttime chaos is a deeper purpose, breaking down the ego's defenses and creating space for what has long been ignored or excluded. Sleep becomes a territory of integration. Many people try to silence the process with medication or force themselves into rest. But this disturbance is not always dysfunction. In many ways, it behaves like a ritual of transformation. What the conscious mind avoids during the day, the unconscious continues processing at night. And even if the mind cannot fully understand it, the body senses that something profound is being reorganized internally. So if sleep disappears and dreams begin arriving in waves, avoid trying to control every part of the experience. Write the dreams down. Observe recurring patterns. Pay attention to the symbols. These dream fragments are rarely random. They often carry messages from the unconscious mind, and sometimes the only way those messages can reach you is by waking you in the middle of the night. The seventh symptom is a hypersensitivity that seems to take over the senses. Sounds that once felt normal suddenly become overwhelming. Artificial lights feel irritating. Crowded environments that were once manageable now feel exhausting. This is not simply being overly sensitive or emotionally fragile. It is the soul experiencing reality in a more direct and unfiltered way. When the ego remains fully intact, it acts like armor. It protects, filters, and softens the impact of the outside world. But as awakening progresses, that armor begins to weaken, and what was once blocked or filtered now arrives with full intensity. The body starts behaving like a radar system, absorbing everything more deeply than before. Loud music, strong smells, emotional tension, even someone's facial expression can suddenly feel amplified. Jung believed that the more conscious a person becomes, the more exposed they may feel, not because they are weak, but because they are more open to experience itself. The psyche, once insulated, expands into broader awareness, and the body reflects that shift. This sensitivity becomes a signal that something inside can no longer tolerate constant external noise or emotional dissonance. This phase can feel isolating. Many people begin avoiding crowded places, public transportation, gatherings, or overstimulating environments. The world starts to feel too loud, too busy, too overwhelming. But this withdrawal is not necessarily disconnection. It is recalibration. The body is trying to tune itself to a different level of awareness, and until balance is restored, anything out of alignment may feel harsh or draining. The emotional armor has weakened. The nervous system feels exposed. Yet within that openness exists a deeper ability to feel life more clearly. Small sounds begin to feel meaningful. Simple gestures carry emotional depth. Nature itself can bring physical calm and relief. What once felt like a weakness slowly becomes a guide. Sensitivity transforms into a compass. This process is not about escaping the world. It is about learning how to live within it again, but with a new level of awareness, a thinner skin, a more open presence, and a deeper connection to what truly resonates. The body is teaching that awareness now requires discernment, and that not every person, place, or environment aligns with someone learning to listen with their whole being. The eighth symptom appears through one of the most automatic parts of daily life: food. Suddenly, certain foods you once enjoyed begin causing discomfort or even aversion. Other foods that never interested you before become strong cravings. Appetite changes in subtle but undeniable ways, almost as if the body instinctively knows what still nourishes it and what no longer supports the person you are becoming. This is not about diet trends or discipline. It is about energetic alignment. As the body begins realigning with the soul, it often rejects what feels incompatible with this new internal state. Highly processed foods, heavy meals, excessive sugar, or substances that once brought comfort may suddenly feel disruptive or overwhelming. What once numbed the system now feels heavy and out of place. Jung viewed hunger symbolically as a deeper longing for meaning itself, and during awakening, that longing begins appearing in unexpected ways. It is no longer only the stomach asking to be fed. The spirit itself begins searching for something it cannot yet fully describe. Because of this, food often becomes symbolic. Some days nothing feels satisfying because what is missing is not nutrition, but connection, clarity, truth, or emotional presence. At the same time, new cravings may emerge. Fruits, water, natural foods, grounding meals, or even spontaneous fasting. The body begins requesting what supports its inner transformation. Eating becomes less automatic and more reflective. Every choice begins carrying meaning. Does this nourish me or distance me from myself? Does it bring clarity or numbness? Appetite becomes a dialogue between the body and the soul. Within this symptom, a new relationship with self-care begins to form. Eating is no longer only functional, it becomes an act of awareness and listening. Food becomes symbolic of what you are willing to receive from the world, and often the body begins accepting only what feels clean, not just physically, but emotionally and symbolically as well. If your preferences have changed, if hunger feels unfamiliar, or if foods that once comforted you now feel wrong, pay attention. The body may be signaling that something inside has shifted, and what once sustained the old version of you may no longer support who you are becoming. The ninth symptom of spiritual awakening appears through emotional release. Suddenly, tears arrive without warning. There may be no clear reason, yet emotion fills the body completely. Sometimes it emerges as anger that has remained buried for years, demanding release. Other times it appears as pressure in the chest, a lump in the throat, or an emotional overflow that can no longer remain contained. And the body responds in the only way it can, trembling, crying, exhaling, opening what has remained closed for too long. These emotional reactions are not signs of weakness or collapse. They are release mechanisms. For years, perhaps decades, the body stored emotions that were never fully expressed, processed, or understood. And now, as awakening unfolds, everything hidden behind the ego, the social mask, and emotional performance begins rising to the surface. The body becomes the channel through which the soul finally begins cleansing itself. Jung once said, "What we do not confront within ourselves, we meet as fate." But before becoming fate, unresolved emotion often first appears as a symptom, and before becoming chronic, it may emerge through emotional release. Tears without a story, sudden anger, ancient grief finally finding expression. These moments can feel deeply disorienting. Life on the outside may appear completely normal, yet internally the body feels overwhelmed. The mind tries to explain it, but explanation often fails. And this is where healing begins, not through control or analysis, but through allowing the emotion to move. This stage is not about intellectually understanding every feeling. It is about creating enough space for those feelings to pass through naturally. The soul is not asking you to suppress emotion. It is asking you to stay present with it, to breathe while the feeling moves through you like an ancient wave. The body carries deep wisdom. It does not release what you are unprepared to face. But when release finally happens, trust the process. It means the moment has arrived. If the tears come, allow yourself to cry. If anger rises, acknowledge it honestly. If the trembling begins, let the body complete what it has been trying to release for years. Embrace it. What is leaving your body is not weakness, it is weight. Old emotional burdens are finally being released to create space for something lighter and more aligned. The 10th symptom often appears in very specific areas of the body. A tight jaw when you wake up, a stiff neck without any physical strain, a heavy feeling in the back, almost as though you are carrying an invisible load. These areas do not tense up without reason. They are the places where unspoken emotions and unresolved pressure have been stored for far too long. The body always communicates, but when its signals are ignored, it begins to store what has not been expressed, processed, or transformed. And every area of tension carries meaning far beyond simple physical mechanics. The neck, for example, connects the head and the heart. When it becomes stiff, it may reflect conflict between thoughts and emotions. The jaw is where suppressed words, anger, and unmade decisions often remain trapped. And the back has long symbolized the place where people carry responsibilities, inherited expectations, and emotional roles they never truly chose for themselves. During spiritual awakening, these areas often become painful because old emotional patterns are beginning to dissolve. The body, which once held emotional silence through tension and rigidity, starts letting go. And release can hurt. The muscular structure that once supported the false self can no longer continue carrying what feels inauthentic. Pain is not always punishment. Sometimes it is a warning, a message saying, "This burden no longer belongs to you." Carl Jung believed the body was an extension of the psyche. He saw physical symptoms as expressions of psychological content that had not yet been fully integrated. In other words, where pain exists, there is often a deeper story waiting to be understood, a message, a part of the soul asking to be acknowledged. That is why treating the pain only with stretches, medication, or temporary relief may quiet the symptom, but not necessarily heal its deeper source. The purpose here is not simply to fix the body. It is to truly listen to it. Place your attention on the area that hurts and ask yourself, what have I been carrying for too long? What emotional tension is hidden here? What still needs to be expressed, released, or finally let go? The body is not standing in the way of consciousness. In many ways, it is the path itself. And if the body hurts, it may be because something inside can no longer pretend that everything is fine. The final physical symptom of spiritual awakening is one that often confuses even people familiar with the process. Sudden lightheadedness while resting, feeling unsteady while walking, moments when reality itself feels slightly altered, as though something shifted internally even if nobody else notices it. The sensation can be subtle, but it feels very real. The body recognizes it, even when the mind tries to dismiss it. This disorientation is not only physical, it is perceptual. Time may seem to move differently. Space can feel expanded or strangely compressed. Words may take longer to process. Some days you may feel disconnected from yourself, almost as though you are no longer fully identified with the person you once believed yourself to be. And as uncomfortable as this can feel, it often happens for a reason. The old inner map is no longer functioning the same way. Jung viewed the breakdown of old psychological structures as a necessary part of individuation. When the old identity begins losing its center, the inner world starts reorganizing itself. But that reorganization rarely begins with clarity. It usually begins with confusion and instability. Old routines, beliefs, habits, and emotional patterns that once felt safe begin dissolving. And the body, trying to adapt to this transformation, responds with imbalance. The mind may call it confusion, but it is something deeper than that. It is temporary disorientation, like a compass losing direction not because it is damaged, but because the magnetic field itself has changed. The old orientation was built around survival. The new one is being built around truth. And the space between those two states can feel unstable. This symptom can be difficult to accept because it touches one of the deepest human foundations, our sense of reality itself. But perhaps that is part of the process. Spiritual awakening rarely arrives wrapped in comfort. It dismantles old structures. It unsettles certainty. It removes emotional defenses. Because before consciousness can rebuild itself in a more authentic way, it must first dissolve the stage where the old identity performed and played safe. You are not losing yourself. You are losing the version of yourself that was never fully real. And within that uncertain space, within the dizziness, confusion, and fragile transition, a new center slowly begins to emerge. Still delicate, still difficult to define, but alive. The body awakens together with the soul, not as a secondary character, but as a silent participant in a transformation few people can fully understand, yet one you can deeply feel. The body does not follow formulas or labels. It reacts, contracts, speaks, and when the soul begins moving toward its deeper self, the body answers through everything it has been holding inside: pain, tension, heat, disrupted sleep, emotional release, sensitivity, and exhaustion. None of it is random. None of it is meaningless. During this process, it is easy to believe something is wrong, that you are breaking down, becoming ill, or losing control. But when these physical symptoms are understood symbolically, they begin to reveal something very different. A body refusing to continue carrying what no longer belongs within it. A system attempting to realign itself with a more truthful state of consciousness. And that process requires energy, time, patience, and awareness. Jung once said that the self is not simply an idea, but a living experience of wholeness. And the path toward that wholeness does not happen only in the mind. It also moves through the body. Every symptom becomes a symbolic doorway, a breaking point announcing that something new is trying to emerge. But for something new to be born, space must first be created. And often, the body creates that space through discomfort and release. So do not immediately treat your symptoms as enemies or obstacles. Try to see them as a language, as signals guiding you back toward yourself. The unexplained heat, the changing appetite, the recurring insomnia, the tears that arrive without logic. All of these experiences may carry messages not meant to be rushed through, but understood with awareness and presence. The deeper self speaks from within, but it grounds itself through the body. And if your body feels like it is calling out loudly, perhaps it is because it is finally time to stop silencing what you truly feel. To listen without escaping, to stay present with what hurts, not as someone falling apart, but as someone awakening. Awakening has no final ending. It moves in cycles, peeling away layers, dissolving old certainties, and rebuilding connections from within. And throughout all of it, the body continues walking beside you as an ally, a mirror, and a living expression of transformation. If you've stayed until this point, perhaps you already understand that what hurts is not destroying you. It is revealing you. If this video connected with something deep inside you, leave a comment below. My body is awakening. That way, I'll know you watched until the end, and that this message resonated with you. And if this content truly helped you, consider clicking the thanks button below. Even a small contribution helps support the channel and allows these messages to reach more people. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care of what your body may be trying to show you.